Yeah, g'day YouTubers, Spanner Man again with another video, so stay tuned, enjoy the video, give us a thumbs up, give us some comments and subscribe to the channel. Bye for now. Yeah, g'day YouTubers, Spanner Man again here with another video. Today we're going to show you the Stihl USG grinder. So we went out and brought one and we're going to do a review. First we're just going to unbox it, see what's in the box, go over that. Then we'll do a second video where we go over all the controls, and the third one will be we actually grind some chains up. So we'll have three parts to it. So first of all, let's just have a look what's in the box. I've just opened the box, and in this box here, let's go have a look at what's in this box. There's quite a few boxes. This one looks like it's got the grinding wheels in it. Let's just have a look at the grinding wheels. Let's open that up. Open that up a bit more. Oh yeah, that's a dressing stone. Oh, that's a little shim plate maybe for a few little accessories in there. Oh yeah, that'll be for the rakers. Bit of an angle on it. And we've got two grinding wheels, 3/8 and 0.325, so that'll be about, it's going to have to be over about 4.7 mil, I'd say. We'll measure that. And this will be the 3.2 millimeter 1/4 inch Pico and 3/8 low profile. So that's your thinner wheel. Generally they're about 3.2 millimeters. So you've got your three different wheels there, so that's fine. They actually got a 12-inch, a 1/2 inch arbor on it, 12 millimeter. I actually made up a turn something up on a lathe so that you can fit your 22 millimeter Oregon type wheels. So this is the vise, the turnable vise. And because it's USG, which stands for Universal Sharpening Grinder, as you can see, it goes up to 60 degrees. We'll see whether you can see that. It goes up to 60 degrees, so 0 in the middle. Bit hard to see with that white paint. And same on this side, just get that lever out the way. And goes up to 60 degrees there. It has this other thing that I really like. So this is the backstop, but if you notice the backstop, you can push it to one side. That's actually a really great idea. And you'll probably find out it's very precision. Whereas on the Oregon type ones, you've got this little wheel that adjusts, and when you move it backwards and forwards, rather than it being dead square, this is dead perfect 90 degrees here. There's got a little bit of a radius on the Oregon one, so it's not dead accurate. And you've got a very fine thread on here. So nice spring tension. Yeah. Now the reason it goes to 60 degrees on here is because, remember, this actually does hedge trimmers. It does also hedge trimmers, weed whackers, as well as chainsaws, as well as circular saws. So yeah, you've got all the different ones there. So that's that part of it there. What else we got in the box? We've got the motor. I'll get the motor out. That'll be interesting. Bloody heavy motor too. Gel pack, we don't want that. Now, I notice that the motor is being converted. It has a here in Australia, so we have, we're on 240 volts or 230, whichever. Sometimes they call it 230 or 240. That's an Australian plug made by Clipsal Australia. So obviously when they come into the country, they put those plugs on them. Interesting enough, bloody heavy motor too. It's a decent size motor. It's a capacitor start. The capacitor's in here. But when you look on the plate, you'll see 230 volts, 50 hertz, 180 watts, 1.1 amps. Very, very big motor. A lot of torque in them with the capacitor start. It's interesting because when you look on other forums, they'll say that they're 300 watt. So it's interesting with the wattage how it can be quoted on different voltages. Okay, so what's next? Got a pair of safety glasses here. I've got another box here. What's in this box? Oh, that's the shield. That's the little shield that comes with it. Oh yeah, that's part of the arbor system, the mounting system that goes on here. Put your wheel on here, so yeah, that fits beautiful. That's a nice, beautiful fit, that. Oh, and that's the other side of it, and some nuts and bolts and 4 screws to mount the motor, and the big handle. So we'll have to do all that. So that's that part. The last part is the actual huge. This part here, and interested enough, you can see on here it goes to minus 40 to positive 40, and on here, got to tip it that way so you can see it. It starts off, I'll see if we can get some better light here. There, hang on. So we've got negative 15 all the way up to positive 50. A little bit hard in this light. Yeah, positive 50. There it is there, I think you can see that. Because remember, this does different functions. It's not just a grinder. It's different things there. I didn't see the manual yet, so I don't know where that is. I'll have to have a look in the bottom of the box. It's probably in the bottom of the box somewhere. So anyway, that's all the bits and pieces. We're going to put it together, and the next review will be setting it up, and that'll be part 2. And then part 3 will actually use the grinder. But I want to sort of get familiar with the grinder before I do a proper review on it. So yeah, that's just unboxing there, all the parts. It shouldn't take too long to put it together. So yeah, stay tuned. Yeah, back again. I've assembled all the units, so everything's all working fine. Everything was all there, nothing missing. Gone through the whole lot. Found a few little problems. One of the first ones, don't know whether you can see it or not, but have a look at the motor. It's tilting. Now that's on 0 degrees. So, and if I just drop the camera down, you may be able to see, you can see that motor tilting. So what I found out was the actual, round the side here, where we have the degrees, we'll just adjust that, was out by 2.5 degrees, which is quite a fair bit. It's something that I wouldn't expect from the Germans. I would have expected something a bit better than that, but anyway, it's not going to have anything dramatic. So on here, you'll notice that, I don't know whether you can see it, we start from plus 50 up here, and we go to minus 15 here, 0 being here. So if you're used to an Oregon have 90 degrees as their reference point. Now there's a little tiny mark, I don't know whether you can see it. Yeah, you might be able to just see that. You'll see the bottom mark, that was the original mark. I've made another mark just above it, 2.5 degrees out. Now I've got a friend over in Europe, old Marcy, he's got the Stihl USG, and he told me that his is out about the same. So I just put a little mark there. If you're adjusting the angles, you've got very good clear view of these angles if it was tilted that way. But when you tilt it the other way, which is the way it's supposed to be, you don't get a very good view. So if I tilt it to where we're going to use it, and that's going to be about the spot there, that'll be 35 degrees. And you really can't see this very good. You've got to bring your head right down and have a look at it. So what I decided to do, because it was slightly off, I decided that I would put a mark of 0 degrees here and another center punch over here. And if I line this up and that up, that's 0. This is 40 degrees here. This is 35 degrees. This is 30. And there's the last one, 25 degrees. I doubt whether I'll ever use it. This grind is probably going to sit there, but it's so easy for me to look at this side. And I've checked it with the angle gauge. Look, I'll just try and get it better than that, and we'll check it with the angle gauge just to see how accurate I am, how good I made it. Look, that's probably reasonably, that's probably as good as what I'm going to get it there. So that is your 35 degree angle. And if I was to check it with the angle gauge, look, I don't care if it's 1 degree off. 1 degree don't. I'm not going to grizzle about 1 degree. But I think that if it's off 2.5 degrees, that's a little bit too much. So that's 0, 0.1. Hopefully it's around 35. There it is, 34.9. That's not bad. So you can see the markings that I actually put on the side are much more accurate. I've got no idea. I mean, it's not rocket science, or it's not difficult to put the markings and make them accurate. So why it's out 2.5 degrees, no idea. Anyway, it's not something that's going to bother me anymore because I corrected it, and I've corrected it on the side. And as you saw, I just lined those two up by eyesight, and I was that accurate. So I just spent a bit of time trying to get it perfect. It's not a game changer, that angle, if it's out a couple of degrees. But yeah, if I'm going to set something at 35 degrees, I expect it to be at 35. I don't care if it was at 35.5. That don't bother me. So 0.5 degree out. I'd like to be within 0.5 degree if possible, and I think I just achieved that. Now, this top plate, or this rotating vise, as you see on all your grinders, most of them go from 0 degrees being in the front, 35 to the left, 35 to the right. This goes 60 degrees either side. And that's because, remember, that it's a USG grinder. It is not specifically for chainsaws. So, universal sharpening grinder. And it will do, obviously, chainsaws, which is what I brought it for, weed whackers or whippersnippers, as they're sometimes called, which have a blade on them. Triangle type blade. There's all different type of blades out there for the weed whackers. Does circular saw blades, tungsten carbide type blades. Don't know how big, probably 9-inch. Can't imagine it doing much bigger than that. And it does hedge trimmer blades. You have to remove this, which is a matter of doing that one bolt, taking it out and putting the adapter for what you've got. They're quite expensive, probably $250. This is not a cheap grinder. This grinder is $1,240 Australian dollars, so very, very expensive. I could have got 2 Oregon type or Tecumseh top of the range grinders for that. I've already got Tecumseh and Oregon type grinders, so I wanted to buy this. I didn't need it, I just wanted it because I'm a bit of an enthusiast when it comes to chainsaws. So it's my hobby, so I'm really passionate about it. What I did do was check the accuracy of this, and it is dead accurate. Yeah, spot on. Now, the other thing is, it's got a coach bolt and a wing nut. Now, when I first saw that, I thought, oh, this is a bit rough. That's not very, very precision. surprisingly enough, it actually works quite well. Like on the Oregon or Tecumseh, you got this big giant nut, which you need because it's got a spring on it. And this actually, all you've got to do is just barely tighten that. It ain't going nowhere. It actually works very, very good. And the same can be said about the vise on the side. So when you look at the vise on the side, it's actually goes from minus 40 to this side here to positive 40. And 0 obviously in the middle. And to adjust that, it's just a matter of putting your hand underneath, and there's a little wing nut. So underneath where this bolt is here, there's a little wing nut underneath here. So it's just a matter of putting your hand underneath, loosen it, and it just slides. It's so accurate. It's, look, it really moves, slides really well, because this is all machined surfaces. You've got all these machined surfaces here. So there's no binding or anything else. So it is very, very good. I was really surprised about using wing nuts, but really does work well. So what I will do is, now that you've seen that, you can see that really good in the light, minus 40 to plus 40. So yeah, that works quite well. We'll just tilt this again so that you can see. We'll bring it back to 0. So that should be roughly 0. Close enough. Let's have a look at the wheel. So we tilted the head, and I'm going to refer to this as not top plate cutting angle. I'm going to refer to it as the adjustable head, because it's adjustable head for many other, 4 different other Stihl bits of hardware. I've taken the guard off for those that are not too familiar. That's the guard that fits on. Actually, that's not too bad either. You've got these nuts, little screws there, and it works quite well. You can loosen it and tilt it back, but it's just easy to take it off. Now, what you do have is a left-handed thread here on a 12mm arbor. So this grinding wheel here is about 4.7, and if you were to zoom in on here, it will actually tell you that it can do, it's written up there, 0.325 and 3/8 wheel. 0.325 and 3/8 chain. That's what the wheel will do. The other thing that I found that was very, very accurate is that there was virtually no wheel wobble. So I was really surprised when I spin the wheel like that. There's no play in it virtually. I can't hardly notice it. It's so accurate. Now, the other thing that you can see, I think you can just see that, maybe we'll zoom in. Yeah, you can see that really good. You can see that hole that goes through right about there. So when you want to change the wheel, you poke this metal pin. You poke this metal pin in the hole. You can see that hole there. And you loosen this. It's a left-hand thread. And it's very easy to change the wheel. The shaft and even the arbor part, this is all made out of like some high-grade stainless steel on both sides, and this is made out of aluminium. So don't know why it's aluminium, but anyway, it's aluminium. And nonetheless, if you wanted to put a 150mm wheel on there, you could quite easily do that. Now, the other thing that I made, because I've got diamond wheels in the Oregon type, and they're 145mm with a 7/8 arbor, which is about 22.2, I made this spacer. So this spacer will fit, that is a 12mm hole, slight interference fit. I put a shim in there, a brass shim. So that'll be nice and tight on the shaft and won't cause any problems. So we put that on there, and we can run all the Oregon type wheels, or all those 145mm wheels with a 22.2mm arbor. Okay, so we've spoken about the wheel. We spoke about the location of the switch for the motor. The motor is an induction squirrel cage induction type motor. I think it's got 2 windings. It's got a capacitor start. I'm pretty sure it's got a start winding and a run winding. I could be wrong on that, but I sort of somewhere remember reading something like that. It's only around about 200 watt motor, but it's very, very high torque being a capacitor. Capacitor type motors are more expensive than motors that don't have them, because you've got to put a capacitor in there. So generally they don't need to be as high a wattage. I have a bench grinder that's 250 watts, and it is so strong. So I think this set 180 watts by memory. Just wondering whether we can actually, yeah, there's the, we'll just see whether we can tilt this, and it's upside down. Yeah, it's 180 watt. So 180 watts is good enough and strong enough. Now, we did mention about how good this was and how it rotates to the left and the right. Very, very good. We didn't talk about this mechanism here. So this mechanism here, especially, we'll go the backstop, the chain backstop. They're on all grinders. This one is much better than the Oregon type of the Tecumseh, because have a look at this. What they've done, we'll just lock that in a position. We'll zoom in there a bit. What they've done with this one is made this mechanism here so that you can just push it in and out. Look at that. So when you're doing the left side of the chain and the right side, you just push it in and out. The other thing that they did, this is a beautiful 90-degree square shoulder. So accurate, so good. Now, on the Tecumseh and Oregon one, they have a bit of a radius on that plate at the front. They have a bit of a radius on this edge here. That radius can cause some problems between the left and the right side, causing, because if it's got a slight radius on it, and I can actually show you one. Hang on, I've got one right here, because I've got an Oregon grinder here. Okay, I've got one here, and I'll show it to you. If you actually look at that, I think you can see the radius on there. It's got a slight radius. And the problem becomes that if you set that on that edge here for the left tooth and you set it in the middle or slightly off, you'll find out there'll be a fraction of a millimeter, because this is the highest point and this is the lowest point on either side. So what you're supposed to do would be sit that behind the tooth at equal sides like that. If you don't set it equal like that on either side for the left or the right like that, then you can find out that you're grinding too much on one side than the other side. Because we're only talking, it could be 20,000, only a fraction, 0.1 of a millimeter or something like that there. So you could be doing that wrong, whereas what Stihl have done with this is keep that dead flat. That is dead flat. There's no radius anywhere on this. So this is a huge improvement. And when I grind some chains up, I'm going to do about 5 or 6 chains after, so that'll be part 3. We'll have a look at that and see how good it is. So I'll grind a few offline, and then I'll do another video as I grind them, and we'll give a bit of a review on that. The other thing that's actually quite good on this is the spring tension. It's got a lot of spring tension on it. But it serves, that spring here serves 2 purposes. Keeps a lot of spring tension on that, which is great, but it also keeps a lot of spring tension, pushes back on the screw. So the screw has a lot of pressure on it, so means that it's quite tight without the lock nut. It's quite tight, that, and it's not liable to move or come undone. So time will tell whether I've got to use a lock nut or whether you don't. The other thing that's a little bit different, on the older type grinders, they used to use, this was made out of metal. Now they've decided to put a cheap plastic one on there, so I'm sort of thinking it's for cost rather than anything else. So unfortunately, they've done that. This part all looks all fine and well built. It comes with a shim in there if you want to do your 1/4 inch or your 3/8 low profiles, like your 1.1 millimeter, the width of the drive link on chain. So the smaller the chains, the narrow the thickness of the drive link. So you can do that on that. This has been ground on the top. If you actually have a look, I don't know whether you can see that. That has a ground surface on those rails so that the chain sits perfectly flat on it. That's what I mean. They've gone to the trouble and effort to get that perfectly dead flat, yet they didn't go to the trouble and effort to really make sure that this mark on here, and you can see those two marks, the one that I put up the top, to get it perfectly dead accurate. So I think the distance is almost 3 millimeters that I went up on my second mark. Mine's the top mark. So, and as I said, I showed you before about how the motor looked crooked, and it looks much better now. So what else have we got here that we haven't shown you? Yeah, I can think of two things. What they've done, and I'll just see if I can rotate this back out of the way so you can see this better. That's better. You'll see this better. What they did with the spring tension was put a coiled spring in here, and so there's, yeah, it's a fairly decent sized coiled spring as opposed to the old type, the Oregon and Tech-A-Mech have it hidden up in here. What they've actually done also is this part that pulls down the head, this plate, incorporated plate, they've put these lock nuts, and you can adjust this pin. This pin that goes in here is adjustable. It puts takes up all the slack, so there's no slack on here, so you don't get any movement. If you look at the older type Oregon Tech-A-Mech grinders and all the El Cheapo ones that are out there, they've got this pin that goes through the base and the head, and then they usually have a bit of a circlip at either end. And you'll find out that you've got a bit of play in them. There's no play in this. You cannot move that. That's just fixed so tight in there. And that eliminates any error also. So that's something that when you pull this down. Now the other thing is, because of the spring so tight, there's quite a lot of pressure on it. And you'll notice that this arm here, this is about 200 millimeters in length. And you need it because of the amount of force to pull that down. It's quite a fairly hefty spring they've got in there. So that's probably about it until we go through the final stage of testing and all, just to go over it roughly before we go on to the next stage. I only found a couple of mistakes on this. Switch is here, the cable here, when it should have been the switch at the front, or at least the cable at the back. So that was mistake number one. I also found out that I was out 2.5 degrees here. I corrected it by putting another line. Then I found out it is much better if you put some center punches here. You can read them so much better, because a lot of times you got more clearance this side with your spanner. So we fixed that up, and pretty much everything else is pretty much spot on. There's nothing much else I would complain about. I will give you my final opinion in the next part. The other thing that I noticed with a lot of the Tech-A-Mech and Oregon type motors is they get really warm after about a half an hour of use. It's going to be very, very interesting to see how warm this motor gets. Now, I'm talking well over 40 degrees, at least 50 degrees, quite warm to put your hand on. So we'll see how hot this motor gets. That's probably about it. Till stay tuned and watch for the next part where we talk about grinding chains and how this performed and what my final take on it is. Yeah, well, this is the final conclusion part. We've already done 3 20-inch chains and 3 18-inch chains. We've got one last chain to do. Done one side, so we'll just do the other side. They only need touching up. They're not too bad. One thing I found out, I was complaining about how hard this was to pull down. It just felt a little bit hard. Then I found out that these bolts over the side, they were too tight. I thought about that. I thought, oh, I wonder if they'll help if I loosen them off, you know. You don't need them hard as a rock. There's no point to have them that hard. So that made a huge difference. It feels much smoother now. There's still a bit of, there's still a nice spring tension there, but it feels more controllable. It was biting in too much before, so we'll we'll grind this chain up and we'll see how much difference it makes. So here we go. The only other thing I'd say, amazing they didn't include a LED light to see what you're doing. So, but I've got spotlights and everything else, so it's not a big deal. That's made a huge difference. That was, look, it still feels a bit heavy on the spring, but it's still controllable. Before it was still heavy on the spring, but there's too much resistance because the bolts were too tight. Now I feel that I've got much better control, off on, off on. That is 100% improvement. I'd much rather have a stronger spring in it than some little weak spring. Because if you get some sort of weak spring in there. Now surprisingly enough, the teeth don't overheat that much. I could keep my finger on there, no problem. So, don't know what the wheel's made out of. That's much better. That's much better. So, it was something that I felt that needed attention, and I just thought about it, and I thought, I wonder how tight they are. I know they can't, but that's over tight. That was just too tight for my liking. It's something that I might check. I don't mind if there's a fraction of side play. It can have a fraction, because if it's got a fraction and I'm coming down and the tooth needs a little bit more, I can always push the grinding wheel into the tooth. That I do that with the Oregons and the Tecumseh. So I don't mind if there's a little tiny bit of side play, not much, couple of thou, that's about all you want, couple of thou movement. There's virtually no movement in this. There may be something, but because I've loosened it a fraction, but I can't even feel any side play. It's pretty good, but it definitely was too tight. So if you've got one, of these USGs and you feel it's a little bit hard, maybe just back those nuts off a little bit. Not much. You're talking about a quarter of a turn. That's all I backed it off, a quarter of a turn, and it was perfect. So I've got much better control over it. So yeah, I'm starting to like this grinder a little bit more now because I've got much better control over it than I had before with those nuts. I wish I would have checked that out before, but you would think at the factory that they would have not over tightened that. That's a little bit over tight for my liking. Anyway, thanks for watching. Give us a thumbs up. That's the Stihl USG grinder. Top shelf equipment. Time will tell. I'll give another review about 6 months to a year down the track We'll soon find out, because if this is my favourite grinder, I won't be using the Tecumseh or the Oregons. I'll be using this. So far I like this. I do like this mechanism where you flick this in and out. That works really well. It's just going to be interesting to see how long these wheels last compared to the other wheels I've got. I don't know whether I'll continue buying them. They're probably very expensive. Anyway, we'll see. Thanks for watching. Subscribe, give us a thumbs up, and any comments. If there's anything that you'd like to know about the grinder that I haven't mentioned, maybe I've missed something, yeah, just let us know and we'll get back to you. Bye for now. Yeah, g'day YouTubers, Spanner Man again with another video, so stay tuned, enjoy the video, give us a thumbs up, give us some comments and subscribe to the channel. Bye for now.